Hey everyone, Heather Gray here from ChooseToHaveItAll.com. I know it's been a while since some of you have seen me in your newsfeed, and we just haven't had a lot of Ask Heathers lately. I'm in a lot of Facebook groups, and so some of you know me from there, and I tend to answer questions a lot in there. But every once in a while, somebody sends me an email and we get into a kind of a discussion about a particular situation. And I have an open offer to everyone that if you would like my 2 cents and you're in one of my Facebook groups, you can tag me in the group and everybody can learn. If you want my 2 cents but you want to remain anonymous, post your question in an email form or in a message, and I'll answer it anonymously in a blog post or on a Facebook Live. And that's what we have this week. So somebody sent me in a question and I'm going to take a stab at it. It's about entrepreneurial support. Like, what happens when our partners, our significant others, or immediate family members too? I think the advice I'm going to give is the same. But what happens when we don't have their support, when we feel like we so desperately need it? So just bear with me. I'm going to turn to the question for a second and then I'll get back on with my answer. So the question is, if I had to distill all my jumbled thoughts into one question, it would be, how do you stay positive when your partner is doubtful of your dream? There are a few other related questions. How do you work on your mindset when your partner doesn't believe in mindset work? How do you not shut down communication with your partner when they have doubts and are negative anytime you bring up what you're passionate about? Thanks again. I appreciate your help. I'm so excited to answer this question, but I'm so sorry that you're stuck in this place. I know it's really sad and lonely when we just want somebody to believe in us unconditionally, to just say yes with us, to kind of plug their noses and take the big leap with us. And when we don't get that and we so desperately feel like we need it, it's crushing. And you get to be crushed. You get to be disappointed and hurt and discouraged that you didn't get an easy yes, that you didn't get a hell yes, because you would want to give your partner a hell yes, and so of course you want your partner to give you one too. But I have a little bit of a reality check for you here. Online pursuits, particularly entrepreneurial pursuits, are just not that common. They're not in everybody's regular everyday. And there are tons of uncommon jobs that people make fun of, people mock, people question. This struggle of how do I get my loved ones to believe in what I'm doing? Like, wake up, entrepreneurs. We're not the only people who have it. I used to work, like back in the day when I worked with kids, I used to work with young kids who sexually abused other young children. When I tell you that people had a ton of opinions about that and they didn't want me helping those kids and they thought those kids should just be locked up, I didn't get support. I was questioned, I was challenged. And then I remember one night in this same exact job, after like kids had run away and we had done all of this crazy chaos, someone was like, we were writing incident reports and it was like 1 a.m, and someone was like, did you know that dog walkers make more money than we do? And I remember like this moment at 1 a.m, just losing my mind that like people can have a job walking dogs. Like, the reality is that people have opinions. People have thoughts about what the rest of us do. And it is on us to not let that stop us. It's a unique situation, though, when the person who doesn't understand us is our partner, is our person that we have to make these decisions with, and when we're talking about things like livelihood and income. We don't get to just go off, do what we want, and not have a hard conversation. These are really hard conversations to have with our spouses, but they have to happen. So the first thing that I talk to people about when we're doing this kind of stuff and we're having these hard talks is, don't frame the problem as a lack of support. That at step 1, you want to make sure your partner understands exactly where you're at, what you're thinking, what your plan is. but also too, your partner needs validation that you kind of get that you're thinking outside the box here, that you are kind of doing it differently than other people would, and that you know that this isn't something that's typical, but you've done your research and you've talked to people about it and you have learned X, Y, and Z. Because so oftentimes we lead with our excitement, we lead with our passion, we lead with the thing that just keeps us going. And then there's this, and then there's this, and did you know I could do that? And our partners are often several steps behind, particularly if they themselves are in more conventional 9-to-5 jobs, or if they're working for corporate, or they're like blue collar workers, or they're used to business looking a certain way. Telling people that we make money online, that we want to create an impact and make income, and we're going to help people through our computer screens, we need to get over ourselves, and we need to recognize that that still sounds strange to a variety of people. So it's about having a conversation with your spouse to say, listen, this is where I'm at. This is why I got to this place. I was unhappy. I've been uninspired. I've been thinking that I'm capable of more. When I was here and I had a full-time private practice and I had to come home and tell my husband, like, I don't want to do this anymore, I had to say to him, like, this job is kind of eating my insides out sometimes. And I actually think I'm like, I have a bigger message to share, and I think I need to share it outside of small town Massachusetts. And that was a really scary thing to say. But I didn't go with, and I have this online business idea, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do this. He had to really get why a business I had built no longer fulfilled me. And of course he got scared. We've been relying on my income while he was going through medical school. He gets to ask questions, and when I start saying, oh, well, I don't think I'm going to be a therapist anymore, I'm going to be a coach, he gets to question that. He gets to say, like, coaching, what is that? Better yet, what he said to me was, coaching, isn't that thing you used to make fun of a couple of years ago? And really have the hard talks. That being questioned is not a lack of support. Beginning, middle, and end. And how we answer that, whether or not we go with defensive, whether or not we lead with the story of you just don't support me, you don't get me, you don't have my back. If this were you, I would be supporting you. If we carry that story and we lead that in with our partners, we are setting our relationship up for a huge fight when one isn't necessary. It's about communicating clearly, this is what I want, this is what I need. What would you need from me in order to be willing to entertain the idea? And to hear our partners and spouses out. I lucked out. I got one hell of a guy who, as soon as I laid out how unhappy I was, he was like, do what you need. It's your turn. But other people aren't so lucky, and that doesn't mean that their spouses are assholes, quite frankly. It means that they have questions that they don't understand, that they're worried about how it's going to affect them, and we can't be offended by the questions. We have to be willing to answer those hard questions. And we might not always know the answer. And you know what? We might have to answer them more than once. And every time we answer the question, we're practicing. We're practicing who we are, what we do, how we help, and how we serve. Every time we have that conversation with our spouses, we are preparing ourselves to do it larger and bigger to the World Wide Web. So it's an opportunity, not anything we need to hide from. And the reality is you may not have this in a single conversation. You guys may need to go around the block a couple of times, and maybe you're going to need to come to me and ask me some follow-up questions about it. But the reality is that he gets to have questions, and you just have to answer them. And then if you're really at an impasse, It comes down to compromise. At some point in time, like, you know, I wasn't making the income that I had said I was going to make. And I came to him and I said, listen, like, we're not there yet. You're still supporting more, like the two of us, way more for way longer than we thought. Do you want me to freelance? What do you need to do to feel calm? And ultimately we came together and we decided that like there was light at the end of the tunnel. It did look like my business was going to work out and to just give it my all. But sometimes, and I've worked with people, and I'm sure people here are watching, listening to this, like I've worked with those of you who it's not that easy, and it's a negotiation and it's a compromise and it's a constant discussion. But that being said, the root of the question here is I need support. I need people around me who believe in me 100%, because I don't always believe in me 100%. And usually the person I go to on my doubting days is you, my spouse, my partner, and you don't have my back in this. The reality is if you have that need for that kind of support, you have to go out and find it. That need is non-negotiable. How you get it met is where you find the negotiation. It doesn't have to get met by your spouse, and it may not be met by your spouse right away. However, you just asked me a question. What if he doesn't support what I'm doing? What if he doesn't get it? It sounds like he hasn't put his foot down and said no. He hasn't called it and said, like, no, I can't continue this relationship if you keep doing this. So you may be in struggle about it, you may be in conflict about it, but as much as we hate that letting word, he's letting you do it. He's not saying you can't. He's continuing in a relationship with you and having you do this. It's not the best form of support, but it is a form of support, because I talk to people whose spouses have laid down the gauntlet and just said, I can't be in relationship with someone who wants an unsteady, unreliable income and is okay with it. That being said, you do need that community. You do need to find those people. And I happen to know the person who sent me this question, and I know you have people. I know we're in mutual Facebook groups together, and you may have to struggle with the idea that your people are online, that the only people who are going to get this are other online entrepreneurs, but welcome to it. Like, I didn't hear about online business 3 years ago. I wouldn't have known what anybody was talking, particularly other therapists who wanted to move online, because it's a completely different world. So if the only people you know who have buy-in to your idea are other online people, you owe it to yourself to show up. You owe it to yourself to find those people, build those relationships, join those groups, have those discussions, show up in the group, get the support. It might not come from your husband, and that might break your very heart, but maybe it's just not coming right now. Maybe it will come. Maybe the business needs to be a little more specific, measurable, observable for your husband to kind of wrap his mind around it and get it. I've explained what I'm doing to my father a couple of times and he still doesn't get it, but I know he totally has my back. It's just that, like, he doesn't get people paying me through the computer. He just joined Twitter. It's making me bonkers, by the way, that my father follows me on Twitter. So it's that idea that, like, you just need to figure out where you can get the support. Now, the thing you said to me too, your other question is, my husband doesn't support that I do mindset work. Okay. Can I, like, be totally real with you here for a second? Because I just don't bullshit, right? Up until about 7 months ago, I didn't believe in this idea of mindset work. And I am now a mindset coach, and I own it loudly, and I own it proudly, and I know that I kick ass at it. But this whole word mindset, a lot of times for some people gets associated with morning mantras, with journaling, with all of these odd words that nobody's heard of. And it is not uncommon for people to not have heard of it. And when you talk about something that sounds a little kumbaya-ish, it sounds a little woo, like, again, let's not be offended that people don't get it. But let's break down what mindset work is. It's recognizing our worth, believing that we want more, we're capable of getting it, and we're willing to learn how to do it, that we may have questions, but we're willing to find out, but that there's something bigger for us, that we're worthy and deserving of getting it. If you told your husband, I'm just kind of struggling with this idea that I'm meant to be something more, and I want to help in figuring that out. I see other confident people online in groups or in conversations, and I want to learn how they get that kind of confidence. Or I'm tired of thinking small. I'm tired of setting small goals. I want to do more of that. If you break down for yourself what mindset work looks like for you and what you're trying to accomplish, how you've been feeling, how you don't want to feel anymore, and how you're hoping to feel next. If you break that down and you look at it and you describe that instead of calling it mindset work, are you really still unsupported? Do you really get questioned and doubted? Is wanting more and feeling confident and liking yourself and being happier something that your husband can't wrap his mind around, or your wife can't wrap her mind around, or your partner? Like, is that really it? Or do they just not get the jargon? Because there's a difference between not supporting the jargon and not supporting the person. And the jargon is something that can be taught. It can be explained. It can be sort of questioned, especially if we don't look at it with defensiveness. Like, especially if we're like, oh, you don't have my back, you don't get this, rah, and go at you fighting. If you're just willing to sit with the question, if you're willing to recognize that these questions might lead to some really hard conversations. Because the reality is oftentimes when we get overwhelmed and worried about being asked too many questions, the thing that really is getting struck for us is this idea that the person asking is kind of triggering a question we have for ourselves. That, like, we're kind of secretly worried that we don't have our shit together to figure this out. That maybe our idea really is too out there, or maybe no one else is going to see its potential. So sometimes when we're questioned, we're just hearing our own inner critic in our head, and we have to tell the person and ourselves to shut up. That being said, you're ending your question with a really good point. How do I stay positive when I'm being questioned, when I'm being doubted, when the most important thing in my world isn't understood? And the reality is you go looking for the support in all the other places. Right now, your lens is probably tuned to the eye rolls, the sighs, the silence that comes when you talk about what you've been doing that day, the lack of interest, the sneers, whatever it is you're managing right now that feels like a lack of support. You are tuned in on high alert, and there's like an antenna on top of your head. Watch Facebook Live put the antenna as my screenshot, and I'm going to have that finger sticking in the air. But that's what's happening right now, is you're just scanning, and you're seeing all the places where he just doesn't have your back, or she just doesn't have your back, and you're not looking for the places where that exists. So one of the ways to stay positive is to look for it, to balance out the lack of support with where you actually are getting it, where with the parts of your relationship really are working. Because I'm sure not everything is broken, even though it might feel that way right now. and you make a commitment that you're going to keep the conversation going. You're going to start to focus more on wins. You're going to figure out what your partner or spouse would need to have buy-in into in order to start getting it more. You're going to highlight those things, and you're going to share the other stuff with the people who get it, who are going to support you and who are going to rally around you. You stay tuned into the fact that what is right now won't always be. Right now, the two of you are in a tough spot and you're not getting the support you need, but that's okay. It's not always going to be this way, because you're going to focus on the parts that you do have control over. You're going to focus on your business. You're going to focus on the things you need to learn, what you're going to do next, and you're going to recognize that your relationship doesn't live and die by this thing. And you're going to have some hard conversations ahead of time, but they're not all going to be hard. But if you stop what you're doing in your business because you're waiting for support, you're failing one of the entrepreneurial tests, because we all get tested in all kinds of different ways. We're always challenged. There's always something new, something unexpected, something we didn't prepare for. And you're not always going to know what's next. But if you keep at it, you keep showing up for yourself, you keep asking people like me questions, you keep reaching out to community, it starts to come together. And when it starts to come together, it's easier for people to wrap their mind around. The other thing too is some of it might end up being accepting the lack of interest, but not seeing it as a lack of support. I write blog articles, granted, ever since Facebook Live was invented for me. It's been a long time since I've been writing consistently, and those of you who are waiting for my blogs, I'm sorry about that. But my husband doesn't read my articles. I can't remember the last time he read an article. And I don't think that he's not supportive, but I write about things he's not interested in. And P.S., he flies helicopters inside our house. I'm not particularly interested in that, but he's passionate about it, super passionate about it. There's holes in our walls that illustrate just how passionate he is about flying helicopters inside the house. I don't have to get it, but I really get that he loves it. And I've learned to keep my mouth shut, and I've learned to look away. And if you start to focus on the ways that the two of you in your relationship do that for each other, you're going to be okay. And if you tell him, it's okay, you don't have to get this right now. If you tell her, listen, I know you don't have my back. I know that this isn't like what you want to hear right now, but I promise you I'm working on it. Or you make a commitment to answering questions. I know that over time, as I've made different business investments, my husband has wanted to look at the numbers. He has wanted to know specifically where money's going. And when I was making money consistently in the brick and mortar, I ran that show by myself, and he didn't really care. But this is a new thing that affects us. He gets to ask the question, because that's what we made a commitment to when we made a commitment to a relationship. And these are really hard conversations, but they don't have to be deal breakers. They don't have to be the end of the world. But you do have to be willing to have the hard conversation, to sit without defensiveness. And then when the time comes, if the time comes, be willing to talk about how hard it is, and how much it hurts, and how you just kind of daydream about unconditional support, and how you're being affected when you don't have it. And then maybe see what happens next in the relationship. Just don't lead with that, because those feelings are real and they exist, but so often we're misinterpreting a lack of support. So get to the root of that. And then if you're still not feeling supported, and there's still a conflict, and you're still at an impasse, well, then that's another conversation for another time, but you're not there yet. So don't put yourself there. Don't start scanning for yourself to be there. Just show up as you are now, with the tools you've accumulated, the things you want to learn, and be open to having the conversation. I'm so glad that you asked this question. I have a freebie that I'm going to put in the links. I have to check because I don't know if I archived it or what, but I do have an ebook on how to get your partners to dream with you. My guess is, I haven't read that ebook in a while that I wrote, but my guess is a lot of the same stuff that I just talked about today is in it. But if I can find it for you, I will post the link in the comments for anybody who wants it. And if you want to have more of these conversations, we have them every day in my Facebook group at Choose to Have It All. So it's facebook.com/groups/choose to have it all. It's an awesome group. I'm keeping it small deliberately. There's 3 questions if you want to get in on it and you're not in on it yet. And if you don't answer the questions, you're not in on the group. Because if you're not ready to answer those 3 questions, you're not ready for me, you're not ready for the group, and you're not ready for what we have to offer, because we create magic inside. It's a mini mindset lab where people get things done. They speak to their challenge, they speak to their fears, they show up, and they kick some butt. And I'd love to have you in there with me, but you got to be willing to show up for yourself first. Hopefully that is helpful. Thanks so much for asking the question. Anybody who wants to ask Heather, you just got to send it in. Like, put it in a message, and and if you want to put it in the comments, happy to answer for the group so everyone can learn. If you need a little protection from anonymity and a little privacy, send it to me one-on-one, and I'll catch you in the next Facebook Live. Thanks so much. I see Ariana, you've been here the whole time, and I see Chris too. Hi, nice to have you. Thanks so much, Chris, for showing up. And hopefully the person who asked Heather is satisfied with the answer too. Thanks so much, guys. You have a great day, and I'll see you inside my group. Bye-bye.